There are a ton of videos on YouTube talking about the best Pokemon fan games, but whether it's the best of 2024 or the best ever, most of these just list incredibly popular ones that you've probably already played, which can make it frustrating to find something new. That's why I'm going to be starting a new series where I briefly play and cover what I feel to be the best Pokemon fan games and ROM hacks released or updated within the last month. That way you guys can stay up to date on all the new projects, and the developers of them can get a consistent influx of new players. Before we begin, I want to mention that I will only be covering projects either released or received a sizable content update in the last month, so bug fixes and small quality of life updates won't count. But let's not waste any more of your valuable time. Starting with something simple, Pokemon Recharged Pink, a fan-made remake of the good old Pokemon Yellow. Now, while this hack's changes aren't super drastic, they are appreciated. First of all, as you can immediately see, following Pokemon, one of the series' most beloved features, now enjoyable in the Generation 3 landscape. Pair this with the small but noticeable overworld graphics changes, you're definitely in for a charming experience playing this hack. Outside of the overworld, Recharged Pink comes with an optional Nuzlocke mode and 2 extra difficulty settings, or an optional level cap if you'd like to add it. But the biggest selling point of this hack is the cheat menu, which allows you to add Pokemon, items, or modify their stats without the game-breaking risks that come with the action replay code cheats we're all probably used to by now. However, this hack does lack a lot of modern quality of life features, such as the EXP All, infinite TMs, and even the physical special split. But hey, if you just want the classic Fire Red experience with a fresh coat of paint, then I'd say this hack is definitely for you. If you told me that the first New Region ROM hack, released all the way back in 2004, would be getting a new update 20 years later, I wouldn't believe you, but it happened, and diving into it for the first time, I am honestly impressed what's been able to be modded into a game that was released almost 30 years ago. To put it bluntly, Pokemon Brown is a pretty simple game, where you pick your starter and embark on a journey through a new region. Compared to what we have today, it doesn't look very enticing or impressive, but it is very cool to see the ideas behind the first ever Pokemon ROM hack to completely change the region and story. Obviously, there have been many updates to this hack over the years, including the introduction of many newer Pokemon and features from both the official titles and Pokemon Prison, which, fun fact, is actually the sequel to this game. Now, I'll admit, I didn't get very far into this hack myself, as I'm not really a big fan of the original Game Boy games. They kinda bother my eyes. But if you're a veteran ROM hack player looking for some nostalgia, or just want to see what the first Pokemon ROM hack was like, then I suggest checking it out. But maybe you're tired of going through the same motions of picking your starter Pokemon and progressing through a new or existing region, no matter what the goal is. So why not try something different? Why not try Maxie's Island, a Pokemon escape room hack? If you haven't played one before, escape room hacks are puzzle-filled games to test your knowledge as a Pokemon player. Now, these aren't your normal strength or ice puzzles your average Pokemon game would throw at you. For the most part, these puzzles focus on the actual Pokemon themselves, with most of them being about solving interesting battles. This hack's developer has created escape room hacks in the past, one of which being featured by some pretty popular YouTubers. So you can expect the puzzles to be very high quality, and if you get stuck on one of them, which I admittedly did a few times, there is an NPC who will give you a pretty good hint in exchange for playtime, which is what most players use to measure themselves against each other. But I did try my best with this showcase to not show off too much of the hack, as the creator requests players of it to not spoil anything. So if you're looking for something different, but still Pokemon related, I'd say give this one a go. Normally, I'm not really a fan of hacks that don't make any changes to the actual overworlds of Kanto or Hoenn, but with this being a community-driven hack to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Pokemon Emerald, I'll give it a pass. Pokemon Emerald Resprited is a very simple hack, where a ton of artists came together and, well, resprited every Pokemon. Some of them are pretty high quality, while others are just quite silly. But for the most part, this is pretty much just the vanilla Emerald experience. There is, however, a second version though, that alters the trainer teams and encounter tables so that all 386 sprites can be seen by the player. If you're a longtime Pokemon ROM hack player, then you might be familiar with a very old hack called Pokemon Snakewood. Snakewood was a hack of Pokemon Ruby, released all the way back in 2010, where you'd play through a version of Hoenn destroyed by a zombie apocalypse. Now, of course, being one of the first story hacks, and being nearly 14 years old at this point, Snakewood doesn't feel very inviting to many new players. But just a few days ago, an unofficial remake was released. Now, I'll be honest, on paper, this game doesn't look very exciting. A lot of maps are very rough around the edges with missing tiles, and the story is, well, still pretty silly and unserious. However, Stygian Snakewood has two incredibly interesting features that play very well into each other. First, every Pokemon has been modified, and no, not in the same way a hack like Radical Red would, but they just gave stronger moves to bad Pokemon and called it a day. Every Mon has a role to play on your team, which is very useful considering the game also has a very hard difficulty mode option. Second of all, this game completely removes grinding. With the removal of EVs and IVs, the ability to select the Pokemon's ability, nature, and hidden power type on capture, and a custom EXP system that keeps your whole team on par with the game no matter where you are. So if you want to play a silly battle sim with the option of some really interesting difficulty, then I suggest checking it out. But the next fan game I'm going to talk about genuinely blew me away. I've played a lot of Pokemon fan games, and one of the biggest things I pay attention to is detail, and this game is no short of that. Immediately throwing an animated intro at you before allowing you to begin and exploring an incredibly diverse region filled with a ton of fun surprises. Everywhere you look, a person or Pokemon is doing something, whether it's munching on some berries, sparring with their Pokemon, or even cooking a pizza. Not to mention the cute sound effects that come with interacting with almost anything. But Pokemon Atlas also makes sure that every new area feels exciting to explore, with an incredible soundtrack that switches the trainer battle music depending on the biome you're in. But we're not done yet, as there's also a bunch of new regional forms to capture, that'll of course feel even more fun to use as they walk behind you outside of battle. I know Spanish fan games are no stranger to good graphics, but from the overworld details to the custom UI, this game seriously feels like it tops just about every other fan game I've played in visuals. I'm not over-exaggerating when I say this could be the best looking Pokemon game. The level of detail just feels completely unmatched. Outside of the graphics, Pokemon Atlas has a pretty intriguing story that's conveyed using character art and a tiny bit of voice acting. The battles, though, did feel a little standard, but the regional variants and, well, everything else, certainly made up for that. I personally think it's safe to say this game has a spot in the top 10 best fan games of 2024. But if this video gave you at least one new game to play, then I hope you'll subscribe, as I'm going to make a video like this every month. But that's about all I have left to say. I hope you have a nice rest of your day, and goodbye.